we must ask ourselves, what is the dictionary definition of terrorism? The systematic use of terror, especially as a means of coercion. But what is terror? According to the dictionary I hold in my hand, terror is violent or destructive acts, such as bombing, committed by groups in order to intimidate a population or government into granting their demands. So what's a terrorist? They're calling me a terrorist.
You guys have a permit, right? No, sir. Can't be here.
Hail to the freedom! Woo!
Here you are, dearie.
Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
There's no vending on Capitol grounds. You guys are aware of that?
It's a free country, ma'am.
And you guys are continuing.
Do you want lemonade? Yeah? Did you want a cup?
10 cents for some lemonade, guys.
2 more?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Would you like a cup as well?
Yes, don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated by them.
How you doing? Don't take pictures.
Whoa, whoa! Hey!
Out of our face.
Private property,
You got that on camera. Please don't break equipment, man.
Voluntary. Completely being hurt by
No money. No money. They want to give you something for free, they'll give it to you for free. Do not give them any money.
10 cents. 10 cents.
Don't give them any money.
We are free people.
You are. Have a good afternoon.
This is vending without a permit. Get out of my face. Vending without a permit. So you guys want to be arrested for your cause of lemonade liberation.
Ma'am. Come liberate the lemons. Lemonade, 10 cents, guys. 10 cents lemonade. 10 cents lemonade. Come get your 10 cents lemonade while it's nice and cold. Do not use violence. Do not use violence and force against peaceful people.
Well,
Ma'am, this is not an option anymore. You are under
Leave
arrest.
these people alone.
I'm sorry, you're under arrest.
Leave these people alone. Leave them alone.
I am getting arrested for selling lemonade. Do you guys have services?
Lemonade, 10 cents, guys. We've got a few cups
So what
left.
happens if you sell lemonade?
I'm selling lemonade.
Is there anything on you that can hurt me?
You people should be ashamed of yourselves. Lemonade is illegal to sell in America. Stop using force against peaceful peoples. I spent 14 months in Baghdad, and I can't even sell lemonade on public property.
Hey, folks, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, make them not run! No, make them not run! No!
When they put it on me, I tell them this. I'm all about peace and love. They're calling me a terrorist.
Martin Luther King and Muhammad Gandhi talked about such a thing.
Insulting my
Back up just a little bit.
We're not free lemonade.
Your tax dollars! No, make them not run!
Nothing but kidnappers. Selling lemonade is not crime.
terrorism. Diego Garcia was terrorism. I am conscious, the conscious.
Segregation was a crime in the 50s. Would you enforce that law?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be an officer back then at that time.
Exactly.
If it was, I would enforce it though.
You would enforce it?
Absolutely.
If you would enforce the segregation law?
I don't make the laws, I just enforce them, sir. The squabble's not with the police, it's with the lawmakers. I think it's absurd, and I'm sure most people do. Yeah. But I got a good job that pays me about 6 figures, and I'm not losing it, you know. They tell me, like, you got it. And I think it's absurd.
Killer walk from the Middle East, you're a hero. Your country is causing screams that never reach your ear.
So there was this big issue going on about how police were busting children's lemonade stands just out on their lawns, okay, just outside their homes, setting up a lemonade stand, which has been a tradition in this country since its founding. And cops were going over to them and saying they're operating without a license. You're operating a business without a license to a child, okay, regardless of whether it was an adult or not. You know, you don't need a license to do something that you have a natural law right to do. So, and that you're not harming anyone out as a result of that action. So you heard about this going on, and busts were being made, which is utterly ridiculous, completely against natural law. The cops should be utterly ashamed of themselves. It's a perfect Nazi is what they are. Perfect. You would have been wonderful, wonderful accessories at Sobibor or at Treblinka or at Dachau or at Auschwitz. You would have been wonderful, okay? Because it's the same mentality. It's the same mentality that people died fighting when we fought the British, died fighting when we fought the Nazis, and you're acting in the same way, okay? Wonderful example for your own children. But anyway, after one of these cops made one of these busts, he was asked a question that had everything to do with natural law. And I'll tell you what that question was on the other side of this break, and then I'll tell you what the answer that he gave to that question was. And I'll make a challenge on this show that anybody who knows this person or this person themselves call into this show. Of course, they won't do it, but I'll put that out there anyway. So I was telling an anecdotal story about the lemonade crackdowns that these police have nothing better to do but then go serve their corporate masters as whores for their corporatist overlords and go and serve their biddings and shut down this unregulated commerce without a license, which equates to destroying a little girl's lemonade stand, okay? So people set up protests about this, and they set up lemonade stands in different areas, in public areas in a bunch of different cities. And a couple of cops shut down one in Washington, D.C., which they were protesting this activity. And a couple of the cops that went over to these girls and shut down their stand and put them in cuffs and took them off were black, okay? And this isn't a racial issue, but what it is it's a moral issue, okay? It's a moral issue that has everything to do with natural law. It has everything to do with principle. It has everything to do with morality, okay? An interviewer, after filming the events, a person who filmed these horrible events, said to one of the cops, how aren't you totally disgusted with yourself? How do you even sleep? How do you live with yourself? How do you look at yourself in a mirror? And one of them, they were both black, one of them answered, and that's, again, it's not a race thing. It's irrelevant. They could have been Indian police. They could have been Japanese police. It doesn't make a difference. They could have been Native American. They could have been white. Irrelevant, okay? I'm trying to highlight the amoral, psychopathic mindset that these people are in, and they think that they're moral. They think they're doing something good, and yet they're completely amoral. Have no principles. Their parents did not raise them. I'd like an opportunity to say that to one of their faces, because I would say that to one of their faces. And you can, if anybody knows who that person is that I'm going to talk to, because many people will know this video, tell them that I'll say it right to their face, because I'm not afraid of them, and I know that they're immoral. It's not my opinion. I understand how natural law works. I understand how they broke it, and they don't care as long as they're getting paid. That's their God. That's their God. They don't have any God. Their God is the dollar bill. So he was asked the question, if you were a cop in the 1950s during segregation, would you have enforced the segregation laws? And he tries to escape the question by saying, well, I wouldn't have been a cop. Yeah, you wouldn't have, because you wouldn't have been allowed to be back then. Okay? But he says, okay, it's a hypothetical, you know, hypothetically. And he says proudly yes, I would have enforced the segregation laws if I was a cop in the 1950s. A black man said this.
Segregation was a crime in the 50s. Would you enforce that law?
Unfortunately, I wouldn't be an officer back then at that time.
Exactly.
If it was, I would enforce it, though.
You would enforce it?
Absolutely.
And what I want to know is, where was the moral outrage about the answer to this question? First of all, it was wrong no matter what color you were, but it's almost like you can understand how it's like doubly insane and doubly wrong in some ways, that he's basically saying, I have no affinity with my own people. Okay, I'm saying, I have always said you shouldn't be identifying with a race at all. With race is an illusion. We are all human beings here. We are all people who are at some level or another suffering. And as one suffers, all suffer. But just imagine, that's like saying, I wouldn't care if they oppressed members of my own family. If members of my own family were being told, get to the back of the bus, and they resisted that, I would lock them up, put them in handcuffs, and haul them off to jail. Because my owners told me that that's what my job is, and I don't get paid unless I do that. And another guy said, hey man, I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm making 6 figures at my job. You know, you must be a captain or whatever. Because that's all that is of value to this individual. Truth is meaningless. Rights are meaningless. As long as they're being paid, they will do whatever they are being paid to do. That's it. Whatever their owner is paying them to do and telling them to do, they will do. And then he steps back and tries to say, your issue is not with me, meaning a police officer, a cop. Your issue is with the lawmakers.
If you would enforce the segregation law...
I don't make the laws, I just enforce them, sir. The squad was not with the police, it's with the lawmakers.
And you know what I'll say to that person? Absolutely not. Wrong. Wrong. And get it clear. The issue is not with the people scribbling down things in a book someplace. You're the issue. Let's make that real clear. And I'm deliberately raising my voice. Because the people who think that these aren't the people to point a finger at, and there is a time to point a finger. There is such a thing as blame. It exists when people are doing things that are overtly wrong and against conscience. Yeah, you can say, hey, you, doing this action, you're wrong. And then you want to step back and raise up your hands and say, I'm absolved of this? Don't look at me. You're the one doing it. Who are we supposed to hold accountable? Somebody who told you to go and do an action that's clearly wrong, and you say, well, as long as I get a paycheck, yeah, sure, I'll go and do whatever you ask me to do if it's wrong. I don't consider the notion of right or wrong. I don't consider natural law. Rights have no meaning to me. I don't consider rights. I consider a paycheck. And this, clearly, folks, you can hear this riles me up. Especially because the person tried to say that he's not the one who should be held accountable for it. That really riles me up. And it should rile you up too. Because, again, that is the mentality of someone that would have exterminated mass groups of people in Stalinist Russia. That is the mentality that would have gone along with hoarding people into gas chambers or other forms of prison and work camps and detention camps. That's the mentality that will continue to go along with this New World Order agenda of total enslavement of the people. And it's completely the antithesis of all of the principles of freedom that this country was founded upon. And that person should be ashamed of themselves, and more than that, their parents should be ashamed of themselves. We'll be right back. All right, folks, final segment of What on Earth is Happening for this edition today. Got a little fired up in the last segment. I tend to do that when I talk about people who have no conscience. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about a cop who will answer a question about a black cop, no less, that will answer a question about whether he would have enforced segregation laws. That means if they reinforced them today, he'd be locking up black people for getting on buses, sitting up in the front of a bus. That's what he's basically saying. And I want to know, where's the outrage from everyone? It doesn't matter what color you are. But particularly, where's the outrage from the black community on this? And again, this isn't a racial issue. This is a moral issue. Where's the outrage from that person's own parents? Oh no, they'll probably praise him because he's got such a wonderful job and he brings home 6 figures. Because that's all that's of any value, right? Well, I'll lay out a challenge. I don't even want to hear from that Nazi. I want to hear from his parents, because you raised a Nazi. And if anybody can find out who the parents of that person are in the video that I'm talking about, maybe I'll post that video with this podcast so people can look at it. Find the person's parents and have them call into this show. There's a challenge for folks out there. He obviously lives in the Washington, D.C. area because this is where this happened. I'd like to talk to that person's parents and tell them they didn't raise a human being with a conscience, they raised a Nazi. So let's go back to the phones to take out the show in this last segment. Here we go. Chris in Canada, you are live on whatonearthishappening.com. What do you have for us?
Hey, buddy, you were talking about your natural law. I thought you were talking in the second person earlier. I really don't like these divide and conquer issues that you're discussing. I find it distracts from the real issues.
And natural law isn't one of the real issues? Hold on, back up. Natural law is not one of the real issues.
No, natural law is one of the real issues, but
okay.
The black and white issue.
There's only people who understand natural law and attempt to live in harmony with it, and people who just completely disregard it and think that they can do whatever they want with no repercussions and no effects outwardly in society that degrade the quality of life for all. That's what there is. It's not a divide and conquer issue. It's reality. That's how you can actually look at the consciousness of humanity. See, this is the idea that New Age movements try to put out there, that there's no such thing as different levels in consciousness, that there's no such thing as different levels in understanding, that everybody is at the same place. That's not true. It's not a divide and conquer strategy. I'm speaking the truth. There are people at extraordinarily low states of consciousness through fear. This person is one of the most fearful human beings on the planet. You think the Nazis who did the atrocities that they did, or the secret police of Russia who did the atrocities that they did under Stalin, you think that they weren't fearful people? Do you think they were high consciousness individuals? Do you think they had any real deep understanding of morality and natural law? None. None of those things applied. And you want to look to who actually did those things? Don't look at the people who were directing it. That's the distraction, sir. That's the distraction. The distraction is that people want to always blame somebody above them. And that history then records that Hitler did these atrocities. Yeah, was he one of the puppets that basically trickled down the orders of the masters down to all of the other foot soldiers? Absolutely. And he was vile and evil, just like Himmler was, and Goebbels and all of the other ones. But it doesn't happen without the people willing to carry out those orders, because they don't care about right or wrong. That's the bottom line. And that's the truth.